Hi and welcome back to ScottiesTech.Info. I'm Scotty with my co-host Cletus and my other co-host Space Kitty. So you probably heard a lot about this stuff. It's going around, eFuels, biodiesel, all this green stuff. So what the heck is an eFuel? Well, eFuel or electrofuel, they are basically synthetic fuels. So they replace things like gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, other petroleum products basically. Instead of pumping the petroleum from the ground, distilling it and refining it and creating gasoline, diesel, kerosene, blah, 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 along with things like plastics. Instead, there's a different process that's used using green energy to produce synthetic versions of these fuels. So how exactly does that work? Well, it's actually done via green energy. So I borrowed this image from the website Repsol.com because it kind of explains everything quite nicely, so why reinvent the wheel? So in the center bottom you have your fuel plant that's actually producing these synthetic e-fuels, and the idea here is that you use things like windmills, solar panels, that sort of thing, to generate green electricity. You take that electricity and you use it through a process called electrolysis to break water into hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen, you can just, use it or release it into the atmosphere, whatever. The hydrogen gas is actually sent to the fuel plant. And then on the right side there, you see it says CO2 from the refinery, blah, blah, blah. Well, it can be, you can grab the CO2, you can pull it from the atmosphere, you can take it from like industrial plants, petroleum refineries, whatever. You take CO2 essentially out of the Earth's atmosphere, out of the environment, let's say. And you put that into your fuel plant along with the hydrogen, and you use the hydrogen gas, the green hydrogen, and the CO2 you've extracted from the environment. You process it, and what you get is synthetic fuels. Now the idea here is that those synthetic fuels will be burned, just like regular fuel, right? Except the big idea is, like, if we take water and we use free electricity from, say, wind farms and solar panels, and we break the water into hydrogen and oxygen gas, and we use that hydrogen, and we steal the CO2 from the environment, and we combine it together, and we create synthetic e-fuels, and then we burn those fuels, well, the hydrogen recombined, blah, 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 you get like water and stuff. The CO2 goes back into the atmosphere when you burn those fuels, but because we took it out of the environment in order to create the fuels, it is what we call carbon neutral. And as you've no doubt heard, carbon neutral, carbon zero, net carbon zero, this is all the rage, right? So, okay, it's actually a pretty good idea because, right, you're not adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, global warming, all this kind of stuff, right? Great idea. And it works, but there are a few problems. So, first of all, e-fuels are not really like net zero emissions because, okay, they may be carbon neutral, but say you have a car burning an e-fuel, they still emit other pollutants like methane and nitrous oxide. So it's not really like zero emissions. It's sort of like, well, it can be carbon neutral, but it's not like emissions free, right? So, okay, but yeah, that can still help. Another thing is, it was way back in 2010, this whole e-fuel thing kind of started it really got going like in the early 2000s, and then there was like in the US, the Obama administration did this and that and the other thing, blah, 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 DARPA, ARPA, everybody was involved, right? And in 2010, somebody had the bright idea to use nuclear power, not green energy, but nuclear. Nuclear is green depending on who you ask, of course, but whatever. They used nuclear power, and they were going to make these e-fuels, and they said, well, it's still like 2 times the cost of like petrochemicals. And, well, of course, because you have to have all new refining plants constructed and put online because it's not quite the same as, refining petroleum, right? So, okay. Then there's the fact that today, supposedly direct electric vehicles are still like 5 times as efficient. Right, that depends on how you define the word efficient because, right, what actual factor are you looking at if you have to lithium mining and giant mining trucks and, slave labor, blah, blah, blah. There's all kinds of factors to take into account. So in purely environmental terms, yes, maybe pure electric cars are 5 times more efficient than e-fuels, but right. And of course, you have places like the EU, in the European Union, they're saying like all cars will be electric by the year 2035. Now, I made a couple videos commenting on this because, going all electric also has its own issues. So, e-fuels aren't perfect. They're a step in the right direction, but they're not perfect. All electric cars and power tools and everything, they're a step in the right direction, but they're not perfect. So the first video is the power problem with electric vehicles, and in short, in order to go full green, we would need a lot more solar panels, a lot more wind farms, and it's not exactly practical. And even if we do that, we need to upgrade electrical grids in pretty much any country around the world that you can think of, and none of that is actually happening yet. So you can watch that video for more information on that. The second video is the secret of electric cars, mowers, and power tools, and in that one, I kind of point out that the battery technology and power levels and all this stuff, it's not really a one-to-one comparison. It's kind of more like apples to oranges. It's getting there. It's not quite there yet. If you want to know more about that, check that video out. Okay, so, but what about like biodiesel? Because you hear about e-fuels, but you also hear about biofuels. If e-fuels are not quite there yet, if all electric is not quite there yet, what about biodiesel? I mean, at least we can do something, right? Diesel fuel powers everything. You've got your 18-wheeler trucks, you've got diesel electric freight trains, you've got, giant diesel engines on ocean liners, you've got, diesel powers buses, everything. Without diesel fuel, you have no food delivery at your local grocery store. So how about biodiesel? Well, biodiesel basically is normal diesel fuel, like petrochemical regular diesel, and what they do is they mix in this sort of bio version of diesel, some percentage. Like, for example, if you say B10 is 10% biodiesel and 90% regular diesel. Okay, so what is biodiesel? Well, it's actually, you take other sorts of, you can use vegetable oils like peanut oil or soybean oil. You can use animal fats. You can use used vegetable oil from deep frying. And you take this stuff and you refine it and you make a fuel that is very similar to actual real diesel. And then you mix it some percentage with regular diesel, and in so doing, supposedly you'll save the earth. Now, this is actually really, really big. It's being pushed in pretty much every country, at least in the West. Right. It kind of works, but there are, again, a few problems with it. The first and biggest problem, in my opinion, is that biodiesel fuels are generally less energy dense than diesel. So the more bio stuff that you put in and that you mix in with the regular diesel, you have a given volume of fuel that actually outputs less energy overall, which means you're going to need to start consuming more of it to do the same amount of work. That's kind of problematic because it's not really a replacement for diesel then. It's kind of crappy. Now, the other area where biodiesel is really big is in home heating. Where I live in France, fuel oil is very popular. The whole forced air, heating systems are pretty much non-existent. Most houses have radiators, water circulator pump, and so of course you have a fuel oil boiler. Sometimes gas, natural gas, but very often out here in the country, fuel oil, right? Okay, so, well, they're saying we're going to switch over to biodiesel blends because, blah, 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 fuel shortages, green, all this kind of stuff. So the first thing I did is I asked the fuel delivery guy, I said hey, what's this deal with the biodiesel thing? And he says, yeah, they're going to switch over to B30, which is 30% diesel, 30% biodiesel, 70% normal diesel. And I went, really? That's too high, isn't it? And he's like, no, it's great. They tell us it's wonderful, blah, 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 blah. So I thought, okay, well, let me ask my plumber. So the plumber comes over to actually service the boiler. And so I asked him some questions, and this is what he told me. Right, so you have your boiler, and the boiler is basically like a giant cast iron thing, and it's got a burner, and the burner has a squirter and a high pressure pump, and it sprays diesel fuel in, ignites it, blah, blah, blah. Diesel burns, you get heat, right? Piece of cake. So what Friendly Plumber Man told me was that don't worry about it because it's all nonsense. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, they are mixing biodiesel in with regular diesel, i.e. fuel oil. But there are going to be some problems, and like no one is really admitting it yet, but the problems are there and they're very real. So I said, what do you mean? And he says, well, first of all, if you switch over to biodiesel or higher percentages of biodiesel, for example, B20, B30, you're in big trouble because you have to change the little squirter nozzle in your actual burner on your boiler, right? And I said, right, that makes sense because, you know, the viscosity, the slipperiness, the squirtiness of the fuel. I mean, obviously, if you change the consistency of the fuel, it's not going to spray in the same way through a little tiny nozzle, right? Okay. Then he said, oh, by the way, you also have to change your fuel filter. And I said, well, that's not a big deal, right? I mean, and he said, yeah, the thing is, it's like when you use regular fuel oil / diesel, it leaves certain deposits, and biodiesel is kind of, I think he said it has no sulfur in it, and sulfur is kind of a lubricant, so there's like, you don't get the deposits that you get with regular diesel. So when you put biodiesel in, even in low percentages, like, you know, B10, B20, B30, it has kind of a detergent quality, and then it kind of cleans out all this former diesel crud and it clogs your fuel filter. So if you switch over to biodiesel, you got to change the squirter nozzle, you got to change the fuel filter. And he said, and the final problem is that biodiesel, because it's kind of detergent like this, he says, in some older systems, you're going to have problems because certain types of rubber are sort of like weakened and eventually kind of dissolved by biodiesel. So things like the hoses, that fuel lines, and that you may have some problems with those. And he said, finally, right, you may have some mechanical problems because it really depends on if the little electronic control has been readjusted for the different fuel mixtures, and is it modern enough, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, this is all ridiculous for most people. This simply isn't going to fly. And plus, and I said, I heard it's less energy dense. And he said, yeah, actually it is. So you're going to get less bang for the buck. So, and if in fact our fuel delivery people are already giving us fuel mixed with a little bit of biodiesel in it, and the price has done nothing but go up. So not only is it less energy dense, but we need more of it in order to heat the home the same amount. I'm like, okay, well, so right. In summary, like, the problem is that none of these solutions, none of them are quite there yet. I mean, when you talk about e-fuels, what that's going to mean is you need more solar energy, you need more wind energy, you need more green electricity in order for the electricity to be free. That's kind of problematic. It was it this past winter or the winter before? It was like, I think in the UK, they're like, we need to burn some coal because we have our wind farms, but the wind isn't blowing, so we don't have enough green energy, so now we need to go back to burning the fossil fuels. The nice dirty coal plants need to step up and cover the difference. And you're going like, right, so maybe your green thing wasn't so brilliant after all. So that's kind of problematic. You know, climate change, whether you believe that it's cooling or warming, you know, honestly, like, any idiot can look out the window and see that, like, the weather is strange no matter where you live, pretty much, right? So we can hopefully agree on saying that something is changing, and if something changes in the wrong direction, well, you might have less sunlight, which means you have less solar power, which means all those solar panels that you just spent a fortune on could become pretty useless, depending on where you are. So that's kind of problematic. You know, other sources of energy, you know, like dams, you know, hydroelectric, geothermal power plants, you know, those could be good. Unless there's a volcanic eruption, then you don't have a geothermal power plant anymore. But, you know, you could get as crazy as you want, you know, worrying about those things. But we've already seen examples where solar farms and wind farms kind of haven't lived up to their expectations, and there were problems. So probably best to plan for that one. So e-fuels, kind of a problem. They're not really that great. Biodiesel, the big problem with biodiesel is that you need more farming. Like, right, so you're going to make your diesel fuel out of soybeans or, you know, rapeseed oil or like whatever, right? Okay, well, what that means is that you need to actually do more farming. And how do you do farming on an industrial scale? Well, you actually need giant, you know, pieces of farm equipment that are powered by diesel fuel to, you know, just till and harvest and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And then you need to haul it all, and then you need to refine it all, and you need to... in fact, one of the there was some paper, I think it was in like the EU or something, and they said, yeah, the big problem here with biodiesel is like, yeah, we can't really switch over to it entirely because we need to grow so much more stuff to actually get the core, like, like the soybean oil or whatever, to actually get there, that, yeah, we can't do that because we got to grow food, right? That's kind of problematic. Like, if you need to do more farming specifically to make fuels, or you could just refine the petroleum that you already pumped out of the ground, which one are you going to pick? So that's kind of tricky. Furthermore, what happens if we just get rid of fossil fuels? Well, I did a video on that, what happens if we ditch fossil fuels, and that's fascinating because fossil fuels are used, petroleum distillates are used to make things like many types of plastic and rubber and pretty much everything you own and buy. Now, of course, people said to me, like, yeah, Scotty, but what about like hemp? We can make all those plastics out of hemp. To which I respond, yes, you can, but then you need to actually grow that much more hemp so that then you can process it into those plastics. And here we're refining this stuff already to make fuels, and then we use these chemicals, and plus the infrastructure is already there. So to go from, petrochemical industry and petroleum fuels to all alternative fuels is going to require a whole lot of money. Speaking of money, subsidies are kind of a factor here. Like, people say like, yeah, hey, didn't you know, Scotty, it's great. I bought my electric car and it's like supposed to be like, $45,000, and I got it for $25,000 because the government gave me 20 grand. So now I got my electric car super cheap. And yeah, and I didn't have any solar panels on my house, but the government gave me 15 grand and they covered the whole cost of the solar panels and the inverter, and now it's great. I got $45,000 of free stuff. I have no fuel costs. I can just recharge my car from the sunlight. I have no electric bill because I don't use that much electricity. The solar panels are producing everything I need. It's fantastic. It didn't cost me a thing. Well, yeah, actually it did cost you something, because the government has to actually get their money from somewhere. Money doesn't grow on trees, which means the government got their money from income tax. So have your income taxes gone up? Because if your income taxes have not gone up, then what that means is that your government is actually more in debt than it was before. Now here you get into like sort of, the political realm and everything, but these are some of the things that you have to think about when you're thinking about let's go all green. Because it's not just like the environment that you need to think about. We have a situation where there are certain political realities with, like Russia and Ukraine and all this stuff, that the politicians are saying, let's like censure and let's sanction this country, and don't buy this country's stuff and don't buy that country's stuff. And so what ends up happening? Well, suddenly we don't have any gas, natural gas, and suddenly like diesel fuel oil prices skyrocket, and the government says, don't worry, we'll come in and we'll save you. I live in France. They have like 56 nuclear power plants, and historically they sell 30% of the nuclear power that they produce to other countries in Europe, right? Well, they can't do that anymore, because while electricity prices were skyrocketing and all this political war stuff was going on, France said, oops, all of our nuclear reactors are falling apart and we need to fix them, so they shut them all down. So they became a net electricity importer for a while. Now supposedly things are getting a little better. Then next door you have Germany, who's supposedly the manufacturing powerhouse of Europe, and they're like, no, we're going to go green. We're even going to get rid of our nuclear power plants. So what happens now? Well, Germany decided to shut off their nuclear power plants, but now they have a shortage of electricity. And of course, all fuel prices are higher because of all the other stuff going on, politically, blah, 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 socially, whatever. So now they have to buy electricity from France, and they also have to buy electricity from the Czech Republic. And how is the Czech Republic generating that electricity? They're burning coal. So Germany decided to go green, and the way they did it was they shut down their nuke plants because they're evil, and now they're actually buying electricity from France's nuke plants and the Czech Republic's coal-fired plants. Like, you couldn't make this stuff up if you tried. But my point is that, like, none of this stuff in terms of going green and all that, like, none of it is happening in a bubble. When you say, like, I live in farmer country, when they say, like, oh, we're going to sanction country X, and I talk to the local farmers and they say, yeah, I'm really mad because country X is who I sell my apples to. I grow like mountains, metric tons of apples, and I sell all of them to country X, but now suddenly I can't. Who am I going to sell them to? It goes, oh, well, now I sell them to country B, and country B is reselling them to country X, which means I'm making less money because now there's a middleman, and blah, blah. All the stuff that's happening is like utterly bonkers. And anyway, I digress. My point is that none of this stuff is happening in a vacuum, and you have to consider more than just like, am I green or am I not? Because, you know, economics matters, and society matters, and politics matter, and other countries matter, globalization matters, the fact that everything is, you know, I buy the raw materials from you, and then I make something, and then I sell it back to this guy, and then he makes the next thing and sends it to that guy, and it comes over here. That's just how the world works now. So, yeah, hopefully we'll learn to get along a little better. Right, so hopefully we'll get our stuff straightened out. Who knows if fossil fuels will... Everyone I talk to, like my plumber, says, no, fossil fuels aren't going anywhere anytime soon. If they do end up dying and going away, it will be a very gradual thing. Yeah, plumbers are smart people. So that's it. That's what an eFuel is, that's what biodiesel is, and it's all crazy. For more techie tips, see ScottiesTech.Info. Thanks for watching. See you next time.